Chris Rock just destroyed Will Smith on live TV, and nobody saw it coming. One joke, one moment, and the entire Oscars turned upside down. Chris Rock had always been the sharp tongue of Hollywood, the comedian who didn't just deliver jokes. He delivered truth wrapped in punchlines. He had a history of walking into the lion's den and walking out without a scratch because of his timing, his wit, and the sheer audacity to say what others were thinking but too polite to voice. The night of the Oscars, he had a prepared bit, a line he had probably rehearsed, tweaked, and polished down to perfection. His target was not some random newcomer or minor celebrity, it was Will Smith. Will Smith, a man who had spent decades carefully crafting his image, was the charming, funny, lovable star who could make you laugh in a sitcom, cry in a drama, and feel like you were part of his world just by watching him on screen. The setup for what happened seems almost trivial if you tell it quickly. Chris Rock was on stage, presenting an award. He decided to make a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith. Her shaved head had become a topic of media speculation, largely because she had been open about her struggles with alopecia. Rock, in his typical style, said something that was meant to get a laugh, a jab at the celebrity world. The audience laughed. The cameras caught faces frozen in that strange combination of shock and amusement. Some laughed nervously, some laughed because it felt like the socially safe thing to do. And then, in an instant, Will Smith's world shifted. Will stood up, and for a moment you could see the internal calculation happening. The cameras didn't miss it. The microphone was live. Chris Rock, mid-joke, had no idea that the room's dynamic was about to change. And then Will did something no one expected. He walked across the stage and slapped Chris Rock. A full, open-handed slap that echoed in the room, across screens, and eventually across the world. The shock was total. The laughter died immediately. The audience didn't know whether to gasp, cry, or laugh in disbelief. Chris Rock froze, his jaw tight, his eyes wide, and Will Smith, standing there, his voice raised, yelled for Chris to keep Jada's name out of his mouth. It is a moment that needs to be unpacked because it is more than a slap. It is a collision of public personas, private emotions, and decades of celebrity culture in a single brutal flash. On one hand, you have Chris Rock, a man who has built a career on saying things others cannot, on crossing lines and doing it in a way that makes people laugh even when they wince. On the other hand, Will Smith is a man who has spent a career managing his image, being the good guy, the hero, the family man, the charming everyman. In that moment, the facade broke. The tension between public expectation and private rage erupted on the world stage. After the slap, the world watched Chris Rock handle it in a way only he could. He regained his composure with the sort of professional grace that is almost unimaginable in that instant. He delivered his lines, his tone flat but cutting, his face a mask of someone processing an unexpected assault while the world recorded every millisecond. There was pain in his eyes, the kind that comes from disbelief, humiliation, and anger all at once. And yet he stayed on stage, doing what he had trained for his entire life, making people laugh, even as the room trembled from the shock of what had just happened. The fallout began almost immediately. Social media erupted, clips were shared and reshared, each one dissected frame by frame. People debated what was worse, the joke or the slap. Some sympathized with Will Smith, saying he was defending his wife and that Chris Rock had crossed a line. Others argued that no joke, no matter how personal or cutting, justified a physical attack. Memes were made, late night shows ran monologues, and the world collectively held its breath waiting for the next development. And through it all, Chris Rock remained the emblem of controlled chaos, the man who had been struck in front of millions and responded not with equal violence but with his craft. If you watch the footage carefully, there is an elegance to Chris Rock's response that gets lost in the sensationalism. He doesn't yell, he doesn't escalate, he doesn't attempt retaliation. He simply stands there, the human equivalent of a pause in a symphony, letting the moment speak for itself. And speak it did. It spoke to the absurdity of celebrity, the fragility of ego, and the strange rules of public life where violence and comedy collide in the same space. Rock's handling of the incident was textbook in how to manage chaos. Stay calm, stay visible, and never give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. Will Smith's career and public image, on the other hand, suffered immediate tremors. He had spent years carefully cultivating the persona of America's favorite actor, the man who could make you laugh, cry, and feel good about humanity. One decision, one public act of violence threatened to undo all of that. PR teams scrambled, statements were issued, and apologies were made. The Oscars themselves had to acknowledge the incident, though awkwardly, because live television doesn't pause for reflection. The world debated whether this was a career-ending moment or a temporary setback, and in doing so, they exposed a truth that everyone working in Hollywood knows. One instant can define you, even if it doesn't tell the full story. And then there is the emotional layer, the human cost behind the spectacle. Chris Rock's jokes often deal with pain, identity, and race, wrapped in a veneer of humor. He had a choice in that moment, a decision whether to let this personal attack derail him or to reclaim the narrative. By choosing to continue, he demonstrated a kind of resilience that goes beyond comedy. It's the resilience of a man who understands that in the face of chaos, your response is more powerful than the attack itself. He turned a moment of public humiliation into a reaffirmation of his skill, his wit, and his ability to survive Hollywood in ways most cannot even imagine. Meanwhile, Will Smith's reaction revealed a vulnerability rarely seen. It was not just anger, it was fear, protectiveness, and perhaps insecurity, all boiled into a single moment of physicality. For all his charm and success, that single decision exposed him in a way that words alone never could. There is something almost Shakespearean about it, the tragic hero undone by his own impulse, a man who had reached the pinnacle of fame and found that in the most public way, he was still human, still flawed, still capable of making mistakes under pressure. The media frenzy that followed dissected every angle. Experts weighed in on psychology, public relations, celebrity culture, and even legal implications. Social media became a courtroom, each person offering judgment, evidence, and personal bias. But amid all this, one truth emerged. Chris Rock, in that instant, had delivered one of the most striking moments of self-control in entertainment history. He did not escalate, he did not retaliate, and he allowed the world to see him in full human clarity. Hurt, embarrassed, but still composed, still commanding the room. That is a rare skill, one that many spend entire careers trying to master. The narrative that developed around Will Smith is equally complex. His apology speeches, his interviews, and his public statements showed someone grappling with regret and accountability. The world's reaction to him was a mix of condemnation and sympathy. Some saw a man who made a mistake in a high-pressure situation, someone whose love and protectiveness over his family overrode his judgment. Others saw the dangerous precedent of a violent response to a joke, a line that should not be crossed in a civilized society. And through it all, the event became a lens through which the world examined fame, masculinity, and the pressures of being constantly scrutinized. Chris Rock's subsequent commentary on the incident further cemented the event as a cultural touchstone. In interviews, stand-up specials, and social media posts, he dissected the moment with the precision of someone who understands narrative, timing, and consequence. He talked about how it felt to be assaulted on stage, how quickly he had to process the shock, and how he turned it into material for his craft. Every word he spoke reinforced the fact that comedy, when executed with intelligence, can be both shield and weapon. The world could watch him in pain and still find the brilliance in how he responded, the artistry in surviving a moment designed to humiliate. For historians of pop culture, the incident is not just a scandal, it is a study in human behavior, celebrity dynamics, and the paradoxical nature of live performance. It exposes how humor can challenge power, how fame can amplify misjudgments, and how a single act can ripple across media, public opinion, and personal reputation. The slap is remembered, yes, but what endures is the way Chris Rock navigated the aftermath, the way he reclaimed the narrative without compromising his voice, and the way the world was forced to confront its own fascination with public spectacle. The event also sparked broader discussions about accountability, boundaries, and respect in comedy. Can a joke justify physical violence? Can celebrity status protect someone from the consequences of impulsive actions? The questions are still debated because the answers are not simple. There is no one right way to react to a public insult or an unexpected attack. What is clear, however, is that Chris Rock's handling of the incident became a masterclass in restraint, timing, and professionalism. His career, far from being derailed, found new respect and admiration, showing that skill and poise can turn adversity into triumph. Meanwhile, Will Smith faced a long road of reflection and redemption. The Oscars incident became a reference point in interviews, talk shows, and news articles. People analyzed his actions not just as a moment of violence, but as a commentary on fame, masculinity, and the pressure of always being watched. The public's fascination with him intensified, not because he was innocent or guilty, but because the human drama played out on a global stage was so raw, so immediate, and so relatable. Everyone, to some degree, could see themselves in that mix of anger, protection, and regret. Everyone could feel the tension of doing the wrong thing when all eyes are on you. As time went on, the incident entered the canon of pop culture history. Memes, commentary, and retrospectives continued to appear. Analysts of comedy dissected Chris Rock's timing and delivery. Students of celebrity behavior studied Will Smith's impulsive reaction. The incident became a lesson in both how not to react and how to respond when life throws an unexpected challenge your way. Chris Rock, through wit and composure, emerged not just intact, but elevated. Will Smith's journey became one of introspection, learning, and the ongoing negotiation between public persona and private self. Looking back, the moment feels almost cinematic. It had drama, suspense, tension, and resolution in its own unpredictable way. The slap was the climax, but the story is about more than a single act. It is about character, restraint, public perception, and the unpredictable nature of live performance. It is about how Chris Rock, in less than a second, turned what could have been a devastating humiliation into a reaffirmation of his talent. It is about how Will Smith, in a single impulsive act, revealed vulnerability, human complexity, and the perilous nature of fame. And it is about a world watching, collectively holding its breath, laughing nervously, and ultimately learning something profound about the fragility and resilience of human beings. In the end, this was a night that Hollywood and the world will not forget. It was a night that showed the raw edge of celebrity, the dangers of impulsive decisions, and the brilliance of a man who could turn even a violent interruption into a showcase of his skill. Chris Rock destroyed Will Smith not with words, not with aggression, not with revenge, but with the quiet, devastating force of composure, wit, and human intelligence. The lesson is not in the slap itself, but in the aftermath, in how one man handled chaos with grace, while another learned the limits of his power on the world stage. Still, he used the event on stage to do what he knows to do best. This story will be told for decades, in documentaries, articles, and stand-up specials. It will serve as a cautionary tale, a masterclass, and a reminder that in Hollywood, as in life, the way you respond to the unexpected defines you far more than the moment itself. Chris Rock remains the emblem of that principle, a man who faced the full force of fame, anger, and physical confrontation, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, smarter, and more commanding than ever before. Every frame of that night, every facial expression, every twitch of emotion was captured, analyzed, and remembered. And when we talk about Chris Rock destroying Will Smith, it is not about humiliation, revenge, or cruelty. It is about mastery. It is about understanding timing, consequences, and the human psyche. It is about showing the world that sometimes the loudest victory is silent, measured, and delivered with impeccable timing. And that perhaps is the most Hollywood moment of all. A story so perfectly tragic, so beautifully ironic, and so human that it will never leave our collective memory. Do you think Chris Rock's response was a perfect way to destroy Will Smith? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our amazing content. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.